Growing up, me and my best friend, one of the things we would do when we were hanging out together is we would play Monopoly. And he was really good at Monopoly. I think he was cheating sometimes. But he almost always beat me. And if you've played Monopoly, you get to that point in the game where you start to lose your properties. All the properties have been bought on the board, and you start fighting over what you have. And there was nothing worse than seeing your property, something you owned, given over to someone else, that they took it. But at the same time, there was nothing more satisfying than getting enough money into your bank account to be able to buy it back, to buy back something that you used to own. It was even more satisfying than buying it in the first place when you got it back, something that you had lost. Now, a fancy word to describe that transaction is to ransom something. So to ransom something means something you owned was lost to you, and then you pay in order to ransom to get that thing back. And Peter is speaking about how we have been ransomed. He says, "Brothers and sisters, you know that you were ransomed from the futile ways inherited from your ancestors, not with perishable things like gold or silver, but with the precious blood of Christ." That we have been ransomed, not by any sum of money, but our very lives have been ransomed by the blood of Jesus. Which makes us wonder, if we're being ransomed, who did we belong to? Something we're thinking about. What are we being bought back from? Because God created us. And so, in a very real sense, He owned us. It was a good kind of ownership where we were His children. We were in relationship with Him. That's how God created humans to be. And yet, through our sin, through the sin of our first parents, Adam and Eve, and then all of us as their children entered into that same sin, we sold ourselves into slavery to the evil one, to the devil. We left the ownership of God, which is the best place you want to be, being owned by someone who loves you, who created you out of sheer love, who wants to be in relationship with you. We sold ourselves into slavery, and we were owned by the devil. We belonged to that kingdom. And yet Jesus ransomed us. When He came and He died on the cross, what He did is He poured out His blood as our ransom price, as the price that bought us back from the kingdom of darkness, and now we have been brought into the kingdom of light. We have been ransomed from this past evil by the precious blood of Jesus, which is worth more than all the gold and silver that the world could ever have. And growing up, one of my favorite stories was the Narnia series, the Chronicles of Narnia. And there's an amazing scene where the writer, C.S. Lewis, is describing in this children's story what it is like to be ransomed, because one of the characters has betrayed his brothers and sisters, and he's entered into this partnership with the White Witch, kind of the evil villain of the story. And he thinks this partnership is going to work out for him. But of course, making a deal with evil never does. And she tricks him, enslaves him, and wants to kill him. But when he's rescued and brought to the camp, she comes to the good camp and she says, "I own his blood. He sold himself to me. He belongs to me." And the good king, the good lion, who represents Jesus, Aslan, he admits it. You do have ownership over him. He does belong to you. He is your property. But he has this conversation with her where he agrees to exchange his life for the boy. And he pours out his blood. He dies in his place. And I remember reading that as a child and just wondering, wow, what it must have been like for that boy to be ransomed by this good king. And then as I got older, I realized that's what's happened to me. Have you had that realization for yourself? Have you realized and thanked God for the fact that He ransomed you with His blood, that Jesus poured out His blood? He didn't count the cost. He poured it out so that you could be ransomed from the evil path that you were on and brought into his family. And so we celebrate that today, as we do with every Mass. When we come up to receive communion, we'll be receiving this Jesus who ransomed us. And maybe make that time of communion a time to thank the Lord and say, Jesus, I thank you so much that you've ransomed me. I'm so happy I don't belong to the devil anymore. I'd much rather belong to you because you are so good.